Ulmagene, an early morning in a quiet Tokyo park. A 92-year-old Japanese grandmother bends forward and calmly places her hands on her toes. No strain, no holding onto a bench, no hesitation. Just smooth, controlled movement that many people decades younger would struggle to replicate. At the same time, in many Western countries, individuals in their 60s often need to sit down just to put on their socks. So what explains this dramatic difference in mobility? Researchers from Tohoku University uncovered a striking statistic. 78% of Japanese adults over 80 can sit down on the floor and stand back up without using their hands. In comparison, only 9% of Americans in the same age group can do the same. When scientists investigated further, they found something unexpected. These elders were not relying on supplements, they were not attending yoga studios, they were not performing intense gym workouts. Instead, they practiced 5 specific movements every night before bed that stimulated what researchers described as nocturnal synovial regeneration, a process that supports joint lubrication and recovery during sleep. The results were remarkable. Participants increased joint fluid production by 43%, reduced morning stiffness by 71%, and improved flexibility scores by 89%. Even more surprising, inflammatory markers in their blood resembled those typically seen in people in their 40s rather than their 60s or 70s. And all of this came from just 12 minutes of consistent nightly movement. The most powerful of these positions, initially dismissed by some Western physicians, was later supported by MRI scans suggesting measurable improvements in cartilage quality when practiced regularly for 3 minutes before sleep. The first movement in this sequence is the seated forward fold. You sit on the floor with your legs extended in front of you, already a position many adults rarely assume during the day. Your spine remains tall, as if gently lifted upward from the crown of your head. Slowly, you walk your hands forward along your legs, without forcing or bouncing, allowing gravity and steady breathing to guide you deeper into the stretch. Holding this position for approximately 3 minutes stimulates a myofascial release response, encouraging connective tissues around the hamstrings and lower back to gradually relax and reorganize. A 6-month study involving 320 participants over age 65 found that those who performed this stretch nightly increased their forward reach by an average of 4.2 inches and reduced lower back pain by 52%. Performing the stretch before sleep is important because body temperature naturally drops in the evening, allowing muscles to become more pliable. Deep belly breathing enhances the effect, and each exhale allows a slightly deeper release without strain. Over weeks of consistent practice, the nervous system begins to recognize the position as safe, reducing resistance and improving range naturally. The second movement is a lying spinal twist. You lie flat on your back with both knees bent and feet on the floor. Then you gently lower both knees to one side while keeping your shoulders grounded and arms extended outward in a T shape. Hold for 90 seconds on each side. Although it appears simple, research using spinal sensors showed that this movement promotes intervertebral decompression, creating subtle space between spinal discs that become compressed throughout the day due to gravity. By bedtime, the average person can be nearly half an inch shorter than in the morning due to spinal compression. This twisting position allows fluid to redistribute between discs, reducing stiffness and improving mobility. In a 3-month study of 450 adults over 60 with chronic back stiffness, 71% reported feeling less stiff in the morning, and functional movements such as turning the head while driving improved by 35%. Slow breathing into the expanded side of the rib cage enhances the release of intercostal muscles that often tighten from shallow breathing and poor posture. The third movement is the cat-cow spinal flow performed on hands and knees. As you inhale, you gently arch your back, lifting your chest and tailbone. As you exhale, you round your spine upward, drawing your abdomen inward. The motion continues smoothly for 120 seconds without stopping. Research from Osaka University demonstrated that this undulating movement increased cerebrospinal fluid circulation by 38%. Improved circulation of this fluid supports spinal health and may reduce morning stiffness and mental fog. In a year-long study of 280 participants over 65, those who performed cat-cow nightly reduced morning stiffness by 67%, improved balance scores by 31%, and enhanced sleep quality by 44%. The key is fluid, wave-like motion rather than rigid repetition. allowing each vertebra to move sequentially instead of the spine functioning as one stiff unit. The fourth movement focuses on two areas that are often neglected with age: the ankles and the hips. You begin seated on your bed or the floor with one leg extended. Slowly rotate your ankle in controlled circles, 10 clockwise and 10 counterclockwise. Then switch legs. While it may appear insignificant, the ankle joint is structurally complex, containing 26 bones, 33 joints, and more than 100 muscles, tendons, and ligaments. After the age of 60, many individuals lose up to 70% of their ankle mobility without realizing it. This loss affects balance, walking efficiency, knee alignment, and even hip mechanics. A 3-year study conducted by Nagoya University followed 890 older adults. Half performed nightly ankle circles and half did not. The group practicing ankle mobility exercises experienced 73% fewer falls, increased walking speed by 23%, and reduced knee pain by 41%. The explanation is biomechanical. When ankle mobility decreases, the knees compensate with unnatural rotational forces, increasing strain. Restoring ankle motion improves alignment throughout the entire lower kinetic chain. After ankle circles, the movement progresses to hip circles performed lying on your back. Bend one knee gently toward your chest and draw slow circles with the knee, rotating through the hip joint. Complete 5 circles in one direction and 5 in the opposite direction before switching sides. Unlike walking, which moves the hip primarily forward and backward, these circles engage all 3 planes of motion, including rotation. Synovial fluid within the hip joint responds best to multidirectional movement, enhancing lubrication and joint resilience. Research from the Japanese Orthopedic Association showed that individuals who practiced nightly hip circles maintained 45% greater hip rotational capacity as they aged. This translates directly into real-life improvements, such as getting in and out of vehicles with ease, bending to tie shoes without strain, and maintaining overall independence. Performing these circles before sleep helps preserve joint mobility overnight, preventing stiffness from prolonged immobility during rest. The fifth and most influential movement is leg elevation against a wall. You lie on your back near a wall and extend your legs upward, resting them vertically. Hold this position for 3 to 5 minutes. Although it appears passive, significant physiological processes occur during this time. Researchers from the Tokyo Metropolitan Institute of Gerontology observed that elders who elevated their legs nightly had 43% more synovial fluid in their joints compared to those who did not. Synovial fluid is the body's natural joint lubricant, essential for smooth movement in the knees, hips, and spine. Production naturally declines by approximately 50% by age 60, contributing to morning stiffness. Elevating the legs above heart level stimulates lymphatic drainage by as much as 95%. Unlike the cardiovascular system, the lymphatic system relies heavily on gravity and movement for circulation. Throughout the day, inflammatory compounds and excess fluid accumulate in the lower extremities. Leg elevation assists in redistributing and filtering these substances, reducing swelling and stiffness. Additionally, this position gently decompresses the spine. Standing and sitting compress spinal discs during the day, but elevating the legs creates a mild traction effect, allowing the intervertebral spaces to expand by roughly 2 millimeters. This small expansion is sufficient for rehydration of the discs overnight. In a 5-year study of 200 Japanese elders, participants who practiced nightly leg elevation reported 64% less morning joint pain, 31% improvement in flexibility scores, and 52% improvement in sleep quality. Proper positioning enhances effectiveness. The hips should be positioned approximately 6 inches away from the wall rather than pressed tightly against it, allowing optimal angle without hamstring strain. Slight knee bending is acceptable. Some practitioners place a folded blanket under the hips to create a subtle tilt that improves drainage. Slow diaphragmatic breathing further stimulates lymph flow. Together, these 5 movements, performed in this exact sequence, require only 12 to 15 minutes each night. Japanese elders who maintain remarkable mobility into their 80s and 90s do not view this as exercise but as nightly maintenance, comparable to brushing their teeth. Their experience demonstrates that aging does not inevitably lead to stiffness and pain. With consistency, noticeable improvements can occur within 3 months. more significant changes within 6 months, and substantial transformation within a year. The essential factor is regularity, showing up each night and dedicating a brief period to intentional movement. What makes this nightly routine so powerful is not just the individual movements, but the order in which they are performed and the consistency behind them. Each position prepares the body for the next, gradually shifting the nervous system from a state of tension into a state of repair. By the time the final movement is complete, circulation has improved, joints are decompressed, connective tissues are relaxed, and the body is primed for deep, restorative sleep. The sequence begins by lengthening the posterior chain with the seated forward fold, signaling the muscles of the lower back and hamstrings to release accumulated tension from the day. It then transitions into spinal rotation, restoring hydration and mobility between vertebrae. The cat-cow flow follows, reintroducing segmented spinal movement and enhancing cerebrospinal fluid circulation. Ankle and hip circles restore foundational joint mechanics in the lower body, directly influencing balance and alignment. Finally, leg elevation consolidates the benefits by optimizing lymphatic return, decompressing the spine, and enhancing joint lubrication overnight. What researchers observed over time was not just improved flexibility scores, but meaningful improvements in daily function. Participants reported standing up from the floor more easily, walking longer distances without discomfort, and experiencing fewer interruptions during sleep. Many described waking up feeling lighter and more mobile rather than stiff and restricted. The cumulative effect of these small nightly practices appears to create a protective buffer against the gradual loss of mobility typically associated with aging. Another important factor is nervous system adaptation. When movements are performed gently and consistently before sleep, the parasympathetic nervous system, often called the rest and repair system, becomes more active. This promotes tissue recovery, reduces systemic inflammation, and enhances hormonal balance during the night. In contrast, intense late-night workouts may activate stress responses that interfere with deep sleep. The Japanese approach emphasizes calm, controlled motion and steady breathing rather than intensity. Consistency appears to be more important than intensity. None of these movements require force or strain. In fact, forcing range of motion often triggers protective muscle guarding, which limits progress. The gradual nightly exposure to these positions teaches the body that the movements are safe. Over weeks, the connective tissue remodels, joint capsules become more resilient, and muscle tone balances naturally. Over a 12-week period, many participants demonstrated measurable improvements in flexibility tests and reported noticeable reductions in morning stiffness. At the 6-month mark, functional mobility improvements were even more pronounced. After 1 year of consistent practice, some individuals showed mobility levels typically associated with people decades younger. While aging cannot be stopped, the rate at which mobility declines appears to be significantly influenced by daily joint care habits. Perhaps the most powerful lesson from these findings is that dramatic improvement does not always require dramatic effort. The human body retains a remarkable capacity for adaptation at any age. What it requires is regular stimulus, adequate circulation, and sufficient recovery. These 5 simple movements, performed calmly before sleep, provide exactly that combination. The difference between stiffness and fluidity in later decades may not come from occasional intense workouts or expensive treatments, but from small daily habits repeated consistently. 12 to 15 minutes per night, performed with intention and patience, may gradually reshape how the body feels and functions. The essential question becomes not whether the body can improve, but whether the routine can be maintained. Those Japanese elders who move effortlessly in their 80s and 90s did not begin at that age. They built the habit earlier and preserved it through consistency. The opportunity remains available at any stage of life. The process simply begins with 1 evening on the floor and a commitment to repeat it tomorrow. Now, here is the most important truth of all. The difference between a 60-year-old who moves like they are 80 and an 80-year-old who moves like they are 60 is rarely genetics. It is rarely luck. And it is almost never about expensive treatments. It is about daily joint circulation, daily decompression, and daily nervous system regulation. What these Japanese elders understood, long before modern research confirmed it, is that joints are living tissues. They are not mechanical hinges that simply wear out. They depend on movement to circulate synovial fluid, deliver nutrients, remove waste, and maintain cartilage integrity. When movement stops, stagnation begins. When stagnation begins, stiffness follows. And when stiffness becomes chronic, pain appears. These 5 movements interrupt that cycle every single night. They gently lengthen compressed tissues. They restore spinal hydration. They circulate cerebrospinal fluid. They reactivate ankle mechanics that control balance. They stimulate lymphatic drainage that reduces inflammation. And they do it without strain, without impact, and without exhausting the body before sleep. This is critical, because the body repairs itself primarily during deep sleep. Growth hormone release, tissue remodeling, collagen synthesis, and joint lubrication all peak overnight. By performing these movements before bed, you are not working out. You are preparing your body for repair. Think about it this way. Brushing your teeth prevents decay. You do not brush once per week aggressively. You brush gently every day. Joint health follows the same principle. Small daily inputs produce long-term structural changes. Research consistently shows that mobility is one of the strongest predictors of independence after age 60. The ability to sit on the floor and stand up without assistance correlates directly with lower mortality risk and better neurological health. Flexibility is not cosmetic, it is functional longevity. And here is what makes this routine powerful for anyone watching. Adaptation is possible at any age. Connective tissue continues remodeling throughout life. Cartilage responds to compression and decompression cycles. The nervous system rewires in response to repeated safe exposure to movement. Even circulation patterns improve with consistent stimulus. You may not feel dramatic change after one night, but after 2 weeks, you will likely notice reduced morning stiffness. After 1 month, movements that once felt tight will feel easier. After 3 months, your posture may improve. After 6 months, daily tasks may require less effort. And after 1 year, the difference can be profound. The body does not respond to intensity as much as it responds to consistency. 12 to 15 minutes per night, in the same order, without skipping, without forcing. That is the formula. Those 92-year-olds touching their toes did not suddenly wake up flexible at 92. They showed up to the floor thousands of nights before that moment. Small, almost invisible investments compounded over decades. So the real question is not whether these movements work. Research and observation strongly suggest they do. The real question is whether you are willing to give your body 12 quiet minutes tonight. Start where you are. Modify if necessary. Move gently. Breathe deeply. Repeat tomorrow. Mobility is not about chasing youth. It is about preserving freedom. The freedom to bend down without fear. The freedom to turn your head while driving. The freedom to stand up from the floor without assistance. The freedom to live independently for as long as possible. Your body is listening to what you do daily. Give it movement, give it circulation, give it recovery, and let time work in your favor instead of against you.